Are you working in a building where detained immigrants are being held? In an article in the current issue of The Nation, Jacqueline Stevens says it's a distinct possibility. In her investigation of the Immigration and Customs Enforcement Office of State and Local Coordination, ICE for short, Ms. Stevens has discovered that the ICE is operating nearly 200 unmarked detention centers all over the United States, including several in New York City. Ms. Stevens is a political theorist and author of the book States Without Nations, Citizenship for Mortals. She is also associated with the University of California, both in Santa Barbara and in Berkeley, and I'm very pleased to welcome her to our show today. Hello.
Hi, thank you for having me.
Is the ICE a separate entity from the Immigration and Naturalization Service?
So the Immigration and Naturalization Service actually no longer exists, and ICE is the successor agency to the portion of immigration and naturalization that used to deal with immigration law enforcement. So it used to be that both the administrative and the law enforcement parts were one entity, and then after the inauguration of the Department of Homeland Security, those functions were separated.
So this is part of the Homeland Security?
That's correct.
Do you think that the average American citizen is even aware that it exists?
No, I'm fairly certain that the average American citizen is not aware that it exists. And that's actually a big problem because when ICE agents come into communities, people have no idea who they are. Even if they do happen to wear uniforms or jackets that identify themselves with the acronym ICE, people don't know what that means.
Yeah, well, I've seen it mentioned in newspapers every once in a while, though it doesn't seem to get much press coverage. But it's always been a bit unclear as to just what they do. So I guess the press is not doing a good job on this, do you think?
I would appreciate more coverage of what ICE does. To be fair, ICE makes it very difficult to understand its functions. It's one of the least transparent government agencies that exist, and it's very, very difficult to get information from them.
You quote a former ICE executive director as saying his organization can make people disappear. What does that mean?
Well, James Pendergraph is the person who's quoted there, and he actually was giving this as a statement to local law enforcement officers last year at an event that was attended by Cernata Reynolds of Amnesty International. And she reported on this in a report called Jailed Without Justice. And she, as I mentioned in the article, was really stunned when she heard him say that. He comes out of law enforcement in North Carolina, where he was basically the Joe Arpaio of, he's a sheriff and showed a lot of initiative in trying to arrest people who were suspected of not having legal status. And ICE worked with him and elevated him through their federal agency to head what's called the 287G programs nationwide. And the 287G programs are the ones authorized under the 1996 bill, and they deputize local law enforcement and allow them to perform immigration enforcement functions.
So there are so many different arms, it's hard to keep track of who's where.
That's right. That's right.
He's no longer at ICE.
Right. He supposedly resigned 2 weeks after that statement. So I don't know if that was causal or if just that was a coincidence.
If there were an ICE detention center in my office building, would it be obvious to anyone who works here?
Probably not. There's, for instance, an ICE office on 26th Street, and if you go in that building, it's not listed on the directory that includes listings of other offices. There's no sign. There's no information that it's there.
Isn't there one just down the street from us here on Varick Street?
Right.
Do you think people passing by have any idea that that building contains a detention center?
No, and actually they could even be confused by the absence of signs for that, since there are signs for other federal agencies in that building. So I noticed recently when I was walking by that there's a sign outside indicating that the Veterans Administration has offices there, that the United States Citizenship and Immigration Services has offices there, but there's no indication that people are being held there.
And if I heard rumors that it was the 12th floor, let's say, could I just go up there?
I don't know. They prohibit access to the detention centers without prior security clearance. And even when one does have prior security clearance, it can be very difficult. I'm actually trying to coordinate a visit right now to the Stewart Detention Center in Stewart County, in Lumpkin, Georgia. And I obtained clearance for this visit in September, but it's not obvious that they're going to allow me. And in fact, the Varick Detention Center has not allowed any press tours ever, according to an ICE agent who coordinates tours for other groups. So they allow other groups of lawyers and immigration judges and even law students to go tour that facility, but they do not allow the press.